Hi everyone, excuse me. I thought I'd do another quick tip. I'm going to do a couple of things. One, I'm going to show you how I've stored all my scrap cardstock, and two, I'm going to show how you can use an A4 piece of cardstock to get a piece of 8.5 by 5.5 as a card base out of it, and what's left over. I know somebody else was asking about that. They preferred not having the longer 4.25 by 11-inch piece, but preferred having the 8.5 by 5.5. So I'll show you that in a minute. But basically, I store the bulk of my cardstock in just plastic sleeves, and I label it on both sides with the colour. And if the pack, because a whole pack won't fit within this regular plastic sleeve, I will just put the extra into another one next to it, and then not label the other one, because obviously it's the same colour, so you don't really need to. I also cut off the edge, you know, like on a what are these things called, plastic pockets for your binders and that. It's usually got that white trim that's along the edge that you can put into, you know, a binder of some sort. I just trim that off because it just gets in the way. And what I was doing was I was putting my scrap pieces back in with the colour, and I thought, well, that'll work. But it's a bit of a pain. I was finding it was actually harder work to find the scraps than anything else, so I changed it up. So all that I'm going to store in these ones with the labels here is the full sheets of cardstock. So what I did was I took all the cardstock I have, so all this, mostly I have Stampin' Up, all the colour collections, and the in colours, and I took all the pieces that were not a full sheet. So whatever was in here, even if it was that much that was cut off it, I would take it out and trim it down. And what I landed up with was this batch here of 8.5 by 5.5 pieces. So these you can use for your card bases, right? So however many are in there, plus this many 5.25 by 4, so your first layer for a card. Yeah. And a few of, I think it was just these two, a couple extra of like the next layer down, which would be 5 by 3.75. So I thought, well, that's good, because I've already then got a little stack of card bases and the first layer, and I've even got a few second layers, and I don't need to cut into the full sheets just yet. I've got so much there, but then I still had pieces left after that, and I'll explain the storage in a minute. I still had, these are the 4 main colour collections, and I've just divided each one out into its colour into a little pocket. So I had all these leftover pieces that are still big enough to use on a card or with a punch or a die or something like that. But what I also did was any of the longer pieces, didn't matter how chunky they were, any of the longer ones, I trimmed them so that they fit were measured 5.5, and that way I know that it will fit across the base of a card. So say this was the base, this is the base. It will fit across that base, but if I wanted it to go the opposite way, so it was 4.25 wide, I could trim it down. And that way, you know, you're making the most out of the pieces that are left, and then you don't have to faff about trying to trim it down a bit if you've got to trim it again. I don't know, in my head that worked. So like I say, I have a pocket for each colour as well. And just have them separated. So this box has got the colour collection, so the bright subtles, regals and neutrals, including the thick whisper white, which is just at the back. This box has all the in colours, so at the moment I've got 15 of the in colours. Obviously 5 of them had already retired, but I've got bits of them left over and they're in the back, so it's like the oldest ones are in the back and the newer ones are in the front, or the current ones are in the front. And again, everything's in there, so sometimes there's a piece that's maybe not quite the measurement of one of these 2 layers here, either your first layer or your second layer, so I put it in there. But at least if it's at the back and you've got the smaller pieces in the front, you'll be able to see quickly whether there's something in there big enough for maybe a die or a punch or a stamp or something like that. Now the storage, these 2 boxes are actually what my ink pads came in, Stampin' Up! Ink pads. So I think I said once before that if you can afford to, it's worth getting the whole set in one go, because you save something like an ink pad and a half in money terms. That's what you save. So if you can do it, then that's a good idea, but if you can't, don't worry about it. But when you are able to do that, they come in this box, which is quite a sturdy box. It does have a lid, which I just trimmed off, and I didn't know what to do with these guys. So when I was looking for something to put the scraps into, because the container that I had before was just a little bit too narrow, it was long enough but it was too narrow, I thought about these, and I thought, well, I've got 3 of them now that are the same size. So like I say, I've got my ink colours in this one. This one's got the normal colour collection and they fit in there fine, and there's still space, so if there's extra pieces they can go in there. They also, it's just the way the boxes are designed, they've got this little lip cut out here, this sort of moon, half moon shape, which means that if you've got them on a shelf, you could label them, say in colours and bright, brights, regals, etc. And then you could have these as almost like little drawers. If you're not using them for your scraps, you could still use them as little drawers on a shelf or something for embellishments or whatever, whatever you want. Ink pads, acrylic blocks. So yeah, so I thought that was quite clever on my part. Now this storage, I use this for just about everything. I have stamps in this storage, I have embossing folders, dies, all sorts, and all this is, well, the original idea came from Jennifer Maguire, so if you want to check out her videos, they are on my channel somewhere. But if not, go and check her out. She uses the Avery L stamp pockets, and I just found them a little pricey, so I had to find an alternative. So all it is, these are 5x7 cello bags, so the bags that you would put your card in if you wanted to sell them or give them away, or just store them so they don't get full of dust. And they've usually got that little tab on the end, that sticky tab. I just cut that off, and I just may use some cheap white cardstock and just put that inside, and that just makes it more stable when it's standing up in a, in a box or something. And they've held up really well, and because these are so inexpensive, if, say for example with a, I don't know, with your dies or something like that, if they get a bit wrecked, it's not a big deal. Do you know what I mean? So that's that storage, and like I say, I use this for all sorts of stuff. The same concept. Yeah, it's brilliant. So that's that set. That's that storage. Like this storage was a little, this container. See if I can tip it up without tipping everything out. This container's got like, it's got this angle. What do you call this? Like a tier thing. So you've got a deeper slot here and then a narrow one down here, and this works out perfectly for, like I say, for these the longer pieces. But this is a I think it's one of the Interdesign Linus fridge bin type things, but this is for your pantry, so this is ideally for things like your you know, if you have packets of soups or gravies or things like that, that's the idea, is to store them in there and organise them in your pantry. But I use it for cardstock. So I did actually have my acrylic blocks in here before, but I think this is going to work out much better. So that's it. Oh no, I was going to do the other thing as well. There's me going, see ya. Right, let me get this out of the way and I'll just show you how to cut a piece of cardstock, A4 cardstock, into 8.5 by 5.5, and I'll show you what's left. So I'm just going to use this Miller Mumba because I've got it here. So an A4 will only measure 8 1/4 wide, so obviously this 1/4 inch, it's slightly too narrow. So if you flip it sideways, like so, and first cut that to 8.5, and then swing it back and cut it at 5.5, there's your piece for your card base, which measures 8.5 by 5.5, and then you've got these two wider pieces. If you do it the other way, you'll end up with a narrow one. Well, how does it work? You're just trying to do the maths here. So if I'd gone 5.5 first on the length of it, you would have had this long piece that you would have had to deal with. But either way, I mean, you've got a couple bits that's your leftovers. So one of these, let's just see what measurements we got. So one of these is almost 3 1/4 wide, and this one's 2 3/4 wide. So this is where the scrap thing comes in. So this piece I would put straight into my collection here, and I'll show you this in a second when I've done. And these I would just cut down to 5.5, so that they are the width of my card base. So these are the width of a card base now. These are still big enough that I would keep them with the scraps. So I'll just show you this. So in my main card base collection, I've put the piece in there. And then in here, just because I know Miller Mumbo's in here somewhere, I've then got a Miller Mumbo pouch. I haven't labelled any of these, but I don't know if I will bother. And I'll just shove those in there. Ta-da! So I hope that was helpful, especially to the lady that came back to me and asked me about, I can't remember your name, I'm sorry, asked me how to get this orientation of card rather than the 11-inch length. So I hope that was helpful. There's not too much wastage. There's a few pieces, but nothing major. I just find that when I cut the 11-inch length, so this longer piece, there's about 4-inch length left, and I can get 2 first layers out of that colour as well. So it depends what you want to do going forward. But like I say, this was just to give you an idea of what you could do, and also to show you how I'm now storing my scraps. And I was quite shocked at the amount of card bases I landed up with, and first layers, and even some second layers out of the pieces that I was classing as scrap. So it's not a bad thing to go through and check it out and see what you've got. You'll be surprised. So I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.